Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5 Minute Catholic Apologetics, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about whether or not Catholics hate Protestants. Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti, Amen. Gloria Patri et Filii et Spiritui Sancto, sic ut erat in principio et nunc et semper et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. The reason I want to do an episode on this is because I was speaking to a Protestant, and the Protestant said, well, you know, Catholics and Protestants hate each other. And it struck me because it's really not true. Catholics don't hate Protestants. And I'm not saying this because Catholics are better than Protestants. I'm not saying that at all. It's a different dynamic, and there's a couple of things here. So let's start with why Protestants, not all of them, but a lot of denominations are anti-Catholic. And we've talked about this, the number one reason why Protestants, number one reason why it's hard to convert Protestants, something like that. We talk about the anti-Catholic prejudice that's wired into a lot of people since they were children in their particular denominationalistic traditions. And you certainly see this probably more in maybe the Calvinist branches and the Baptist branches, and certainly the more of the cults and the much smaller ones. And the way I explain it is like this. The Catholic Church are like the popular good-looking cheerleaders at a high school. Why do I say that? Well, because we are the biggest Christian group. We're not a denomination. We are the nomination from what others came from. But we are the biggest one. We have over 1 billion people, and we have a focal point, which is the papacy. And even though there's Protestant groups that won't acknowledge that our church was founded by Jesus Christ, they can acknowledge that we've been around longer than any other Christian group. And so as such, we're kind of like also like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, whoever the Super Bowl champion is of recent. Everybody targets us. And so they have to find things to hate about us. They have to do this because they partly want to beat us. Not that they want to be Catholic in their theology, but they want to be the largest Christian group out there. And so they target us and angle us because of these reasons. Also, they need to do it to justify the existence of their own denomination's theology. And so that's a couple of reasons. The other one is, in American history, it's always been a very strong anti-Catholic sentiment. This goes back, to the founding of the Puritans. The Puritans were a break-off of Anglicanism. But you see that kind of puritanical approach of American history as America spread further out toward the West. And then certainly when you saw the immigrants come in the mid 1840s, 1830s, you saw the Germans, they were mostly Catholics. You saw the Irish, certainly, and then later the Italians and the Poles and all this. And we even had a political party that was anti-Catholic. And so it's always kind of been seeped in nature. You talked about like when Kennedy became president, he had to do kind of the litmus test that he wasn't the Pope's lackey and so forth. So I think these are all reasons. Now, why don't Catholics hate Protestants? It's mostly because it's like English being the lingua franca. Like a lot of Americans, like if you're a German, you have to learn German, French, English, all these languages, right? Because you come from like a relatively small country. Germany is probably not the best example because it is the most populous country in Europe, not counting Russia. But if you're from like Switzerland, you have to learn a lot of languages. But when you're in America, you only have to learn English pretty much. It changes if you live in certain borderland states, but as a whole. And it's kind of the same thing with the Catholics. Like the Catholics don't really care about Protestantism because A, there's so many denominations. B, all of them are somewhat contradictory and they all have different theology, so it would be hard for a Catholic to keep track. And C, you're giving Catholics way too much credit, to be honest, because most Catholics, I wouldn't say they care about their faith, and certainly the liberal Catholics, this is more of applied. It's like they barely care about their faith. They pick and choose what they want to believe. And so to them, in this spirit of indifferentism where no faith really matters, you'll go to heaven even if you're a Buddhist and all these things, you kind of have this infused the liberal Catholics. And so the liberal Catholics are like, yeah, whatever the Protestants. They don't really care. It's not like you rarely ever get a Catholic who's going to, and a friend invites them to a Methodist congregation service, and they're like, no, I hate the Methodists. Well, why do you hate the Methodists? Oh, because they believe in this. Again, you're giving the Catholic way too much credit. Most of them could even tell you what's a basic Methodist theological precept. They just don't know. It's like we speak English, it's the only language that we need to know. And it's kind of what the Catholics is like, they just don't really care about all these denominations. And it's not like they don't like them, it's just they're indifferent because you're giving them way too much credit to care. And they just don't care. So as a whole, most Catholics don't hate Protestants nearly as virulently as the Protestants hate Catholics. And again, not all Protestants hate Catholics, but certainly you see that more. in the Protestant world to hate the Catholics because we're the number one target, right? And then you've been raised thinking that the Pope's the Antichrist, we're the whore of Babylon, and we worship statues and idolatry and all these things like that. Now, is there a segment of the Catholic population that does not like Protestantism? Yes. So you're going to find this probably most in the far right. So this is going to be the kind of traditionalist, traditional Latin Mass. And again, I'm kind of painting a broad delineation of a group. So, the ones I think the Pope is not Catholic enough. So these are going to be the kind of I wouldn't say the schismatic Catholics, but the ones that are not really happy with the fruits of Vatican Council II. So around these people, they'll have opinions about Protestants and not really liking Protestants. They'll call the Protestants the heretics and all these things like this, and not have a kind view of Luther and really anyone who is a Protestant. And they'll be much more knowledgeable about the different kind of theological approaches of these different denominations. But if you look at most Catholics, 85% of Catholics couldn't care less about Protestants. And it's kind of like the popular cheerleader. It's like you expect the popular cheerleader to know every little nerd clique in school. And I'm just using it as an example. I'm not saying you're a nerd or anything like that. But you're giving Regina George way too much credit, right? It's just that we're the biggest group. We're kind of focused on our own thing. And they just don't really care. They really don't. So guys, post in the comments. Let me know if you agree or disagree. If you think that the far left hates Protestants. If anything, they want us to be like the mainstream Protestant churches. But I'd like to hear from you. Please hit the notification, subscribe, and share button. Share with like-minded people. Until next time, take care. God bless and pray.